Hi, Peter Reynolds here, and I am here in my studio in Dedham, Massachusetts, not too far from Boston. I am here in my hometown. Right across the street from me is my very own bookstore that I started 15 years ago. My daughter Sarah now is the proprietor of the Blue Bunny Bookstore. If you ever get a chance to come visit us, it is quite a delightful experience. We now have a cafe as well. It's quite an amazing thinking space, creative space. Of course, it's packed with books, and of course classic books, and also all the new wonderful books that are coming out. But it also is packed with art supplies and blank books. The mission in our bookstore is to inspire our readers, but inspire them not only to read more, but to express themselves and to create, to share their stories with the world. And of course, that is a big theme of my work. You may know some of my books, The Dot and Ish and Sky Color. Those three are part of my Create Trilogy, which I first launched in 2003. Those three books explore three different ideas about being creative. And of course, the Dot is about being brave, about getting started. A lot of us are sort of meaning to get going, and you've got an idea, but you've got to be brave enough to take that first step, to make that first dot. That book also is a celebration of great teaching, because in that book, Vashti's teacher notices that Vashti is afraid to make that mark. And through some humor and through this really lovely conversation with Vashti, she inspires Vashti to make that very, very first mark, and then does something quite novel to inspire Vashti to keep going. And of course, she frames Vashti's little dot that she made in a fit of anger. When Vashti walks into class the next week, there hanging above her teacher's desk is her little dot. And of course, Vashti looks at it and says, I could make a better dot than that. So that launches Vashti's creative journey. In the sequel to the Dot, Ish is a story about Ramon, who is inspired by Vashti, actually, and he loves to draw, but someone says something that is not very supportive, and he begins to doubt himself, and that self-critic becomes louder and louder until he finally decides to quit. And I have seen this happen far too often. To me, it's a crisis in schools. When I go into schools, I ask kids in kindergarten, how many artists do we have out there? And of course, all the hands go up. In first grade, all the hands go up. In second grade, most of the hands go up. In third grade, half the hands go up. And of course, it depends on the culture of the school. But in fourth and fifth grade, kids will often point to the class artist, and they'll point and they'll say, "Oh, Paul's the amazing artist." And I think it's very, very sad that all of those kids, or most of those kids, packed up those creative wings and tucked them behind themselves. They're still there, by the way. It just may take decades to rediscover those wings, and I think, why pack them up? Why not keep them going? Keep those wings spread and visible for the world to see, and of course for you to see too. So my mission is to encourage creativity, self-expression, and how exciting to bring all of that kind of out-of-the-box thinking to STEM. And I was so excited. Well, actually, I was excited when I heard about STEM. I thought that was a real amazing step in the right direction. Instead of silo teaching, where you could only talk about algebra for 180 days with that teacher and only history with this teacher for 180 days, uh, why not connect these subjects together and show that just as it is in the real world, that everything is interconnected, that ecosystems are fluid and dynamic. And it makes it much more interesting, and it makes it more relevant. It's more logical. And so that idea that we could combine science, technology, engineering, and math was really exciting. And actually, one of my first inclinations was when I heard that, I thought, what's missing? Love science, love technology, engineering, math. Pretty awesome, but it was missing creativity and the arts. And I thought, well, what if we added the A? And of course, they always say that in the world, every time you think of something, you think it's something new. 7 other people on the planet are thinking the same thing and having that same breakthrough. And apparently, I was not the only one to think of adding A to STEM. So STEAM emerged, and I was so excited to start seeing STEAM seminars and workshops helping us explore this new territory of art-infused science, technology, engineering, and math. And of course, I'm a big believer that we should be infusing arts into every subject. There's so much potential to engage students through the arts. And when I say arts, I don't necessarily mean painting and illustration, although, I'm a big fan of that. I doodled my way through school myself, and I know that there are probably a lot of doodlers out there who often also get accused of being daydreamers, right? You're sort of off task. And, if I could go back in time, I would tell my teachers that I was, training for my future profession. I know that I am talking to kindred spirits. You were attracted to this conference because of the whole STEAM concept. And, I believe that we are kindred spirits, that we believe that the arts integration is really going to fuel an amazing next few decades of learning differently. And of course, we sort of get it, right? We love it, and we want it to happen more often. Unfortunately, we still have a lot of work to convince other people, and of course, the most important people are policymakers, decision makers, and funders. And we need to work on those people to let them know the power of this kind of integrated thinking. STEAM being a wonderful example of how to connect the dots in really cool, interesting ways. And of course, ultimately helping kids to become creative problem solvers. And that is an incredible investment in the future of not only our country, but our world. We have done a pretty good job messing up this planet. And the only way forward is through new thinking. We cannot use the rinse and repeat model. We really have to break new ground. We have to think differently. And this kind of thinking is really going to help push fast forward on solving the world's problems. So this is not something to be taken lightly. Sometimes I get a little dismayed when you talk about creativity and the arts, and people will relegate that to 10:30 on Thursday. And it's like, no, that's not what we're talking about. I mean, absolutely, you should have art class, and in fact, you should be having art class much more often. And but every classroom really is an art classroom, and every subject can also be an arts classroom. It can be a thinking laboratory. It can be a sanctuary for experimentation and new ideas. So how do we press fast forward? How do we get more people on board? Well, I think we have to show people what it looks like. So that means that we have to do a lot more of it ourselves. We have to celebrate when it is happening in our schools, in our learning spaces, in our communities. Make sure that you alert the media. Let the world know that it's happening. There's so much good happening in schools, and especially in public education. And of course, private schools, yeah, we've got a lot of leeway there. You've got a lot of creative a space to try new things. But in public education, we really have to advertise to the world that there's really cool stuff going on. And I encourage you to think outside of the box and get your administration used to you being the different thinker. Lean outside of that box as far as you can without getting fired, and help your community think differently about integrated learning. My twin brother and I, we've been pondering this. We have a company called Fablevision, and if you get to check out fablevision.com, you'll get to see our other hats that we wear. Of course, I create picture books for all ages. That's one of my hats. But we also have this company called Fablevision. We're big believers in story. We think that story is still one of the most powerful technologies for storing information and inspiration and making that the mission transportable. So our mission, of course, is turning people on to STEAM thinking. And we thought to ourselves, how are we going to help press fast forward? And we wrote a series of books featuring twin mice, Sydney and Simon. And this is published by Charles Bridge. And so we've got 3 books in the series. The first one is called Full Steam Ahead. You like that? Full Steam Ahead. And Paul wrote this book, and I was lucky enough to illustrate it. It was a lot of fun. And this first book really shows how these 2 kids live STEAM thinking. They both love science, technology, engineering, and math, but they're also incredible creative thinkers. So they use that creative brain to solve their problems. Of course, they also use the arts to show what they know, which is like kind of part 2 of the arts in STEAM, right? So it's not just showing what you know, but it's the process of thinking and going off script and bending some rules and rethinking things that maybe we were sure of, or confirming that what we believed is true. So we also have Go Green, which is a wonderful way to apply STEAM thinking to the mission of saving our planet. Sydney and Simon are very concerned when they find out that sea turtles are getting sick and dying from eating what they think is algae, and of course it's shredded plastic bags. There's a huge problem, obviously we know that the ocean is facing, and we need creative thinkers to help us problem solve the ocean's problem. So check that one out. And the latest one is To the Moon, and their school gets challenged with doing a space-related project, and the twins set out to learn about the moon, and they have different ways of learning about the moon and presenting what they know at a big science fair. And just wanted to point out that we also weave in history in the books. So in To the Moon, we get a little peek at Galileo, and in Go Green, we get to learn a bit about Leonardo da Vinci. And so there's lots of cool stuff in here. This is, and there's a bit of inspiration too on the back of the books. I kind of like to point this out because this is a lot of our philosophy. about STEAM thinking and about learning, creative learning in general. And so we attribute these quotes to Sydney and Simon, but this is from Peter and Paul Reynolds. Creative problem solvers never give up. That's one of our favorite sayings. To the Moon has collaboration fuels creativity. That's from To the Moon. And Full Steam Ahead. This is actually one of my favorites. When the going gets tough, the creative get going. So I'm going to be coming in for a landing, but I want to invite you to connect the dots with me. This is just the beginning. You were attracted to this seminar, this conference, for a reason. And I believe that the power of a conference is not necessarily what happens during the conference, but it is what happens after the conference. It's like a good book, right? A great teacher doesn't just read a book and go on to the next one. A great teacher knows how to activate a book. They know how to make this book a launching point for all sorts of new learning and new connections. So let's stay connected, and let's keep finding cool new ways of sharing the things that are working in our communities. Feel free to connect with either Paul or myself. Check out fablevision.com. We have a company called Fablevision Learning as well, and we make creativity tools for the classroom. We make actually a really cool engineering program called Maker Studio. If you get a chance to check that out. We developed it with Dr. Peggy Healy-Stearns, who's an amazing, passionate educator, and she's been a big advocate of STEAM for many years. And Maker Studio, it's called Fab at School, Maker Studio, and elementary school kids, middle school kids can dive in. Actually, we've tried to make it as easy as possible for you to dive into doing digital fabrication. So kids will dream up a project. They can build boats, they can build gears, they can build really anything that their imagination conjures up. And then they can print it out not only to a 3D printer, but to a 2D printer. And actually, frankly, I like this even better because it doesn't use plastic, it uses paper, which you can recycle, and you print out the nets, and you actually have to fold up your net. And I think that there's a lot of learning that goes into actually constructing a gear out of this flat sheet of paper. It's quite remarkable. It's quite remarkable what students can do. And we love to see how students take our software in new directions. We love to see kids hacking things and turning things upside down. Of course, you need time, you need the resources, you need the support. So I'm hoping that in your community that you do have that support, you have the resources, and I hope you have the funding too. So again, we have to shout from the rooftops that STEAM thinking, integrated arts thinking, is a revolution that will help move this planet to a better place. We need you. I'm glad we found you. Glad we found each other. I've got lots more to share, but our time is coming to a close. So thank you so much for inviting me to share my passion, some of my stories, my thinking, and I hope that it recharges you or charges you even more to keep going and never stop. The kindred spirits out there have to unite, and we are going to change this world. So thank you so much. Again, this is Peter Reynolds from my studio here in Dedham, Massachusetts. I hope you come visit me, and until then, have a wonderful, inspired, stellar journey. Thank you.